Here's another Gainesville.com video.
Hi, I'm John Patton, sports writer with the Gainesville Sun, and this is Cliff Olsen, and guess what? It's the start of the football playoffs. They begin Friday night. It's an exciting time. 6 local games and a bunch of games around the state. We're going to talk about all of them. First, we're going to go over the local games a little bit, and then we're going to give you some state title picks, if Cliff is okay doing that.
We'll find out.
But first off, we'll start with the 2 largest schools playing. We'll start with Columbia in Class 4A. And they got Tallahassee Leon. Cliff, what do you think about this one?
Well, I was fortunate enough, thanks to your scheduling, to be able to see Columbia play this year, to actually win their first district title in a thrilling victory over Ed White. They scored, I think I told you, 23 points in a minute 20 to rally, and it was pretty amazing to see a team that has struggled with Coach Howard's spread offense to really begin to click and put up a ton of points in a short time. And with that being said, I know you had seen Leon earlier this year. Columbia at home, that place is going to be pretty crazy, and people at Lake City have been waiting for a home playoff game for a while, and I'd like Columbia in this one. Yeah,
and now Tiger fans, before you send Cliff emails, he knows it's not the first ever district title. It's just the first one in a little bit for Columbia. And yeah, they're playing a Leon team that came to Gainesville and beat Eastside earlier this year, and that kind of started, or was part of the early part of a bad run for Eastside that then ended a tough year for them. And they've got a decent team there with Leon. They're pretty well coached and they play hard, but I really think Columbia is playing so well right now. You know, they've got Tiger Powell, who's one of the state's better tailbacks. They've got possibly the best junior in the state in defensive tackle, Timmy Jernigan, who the Gainesville High players rave about. I talked with Ryan McGriff, the Gainesville High quarterback, the other day about him, and he says he has everything been built up. And Brock Besson, a Troy-bound linebacker there, you know, and I really think that the Tigers are going to come out and win this one, and I think they're going to advance to the second round. Now, we just mentioned Gainesville High. Here's a little segue. They're the other 4A team playing this week. They've got Citizens Field lined up with Hudson coming in. Hudson's 5-5, nicknamed the Cobras, and you know, I think it's going to be a difficult night for them. Gainesville High is playing extremely well, have not lost since Columbia beat them very early in the season. They're 9-1. They've been rolling lately. They had a week off last week, so any bumps and bruises they might have had probably pretty healed up. Coach Ryan Smith says they're healthy to begin with. You know, should be the start of what could be a lengthy playoff run for the Hurricanes.
It's hard to argue with anything you just said there, John. You know, Kevin Nelson, Miami commit linebacker, Devontae Davis, Miami committed in the secondary. You know, Coach Smith, I think a very competitive guy, but at the same time, low key. It seems to be, I think, taking this in stride. His teams have a great year. I know you have a story coming out, Ryan McGriff. It's another team that likes to throw the ball around and can score a lot of points. Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said, John. I like GHS in a big way.
A little advice for any team in the state, unless you're St. Thomas Aquinas, don't play man-to-man in the secondary against the Hurricanes. Seriously, they've got 7 or 8 receivers that can all really run, and you're going to do a lot of chasing if you're playing man-to-man. Set up your zones and see what you can do from there. Just a little advice from someone who's never coached a game before.
A little extra coaching advice. That's good, John.
In Class 2B, got the team that's probably got the most daunting task of any local team this week. The Williston Red Devils really worked their way into the playoffs, beating Newberry on a Friday, and then on a Monday night coming back and beating Newberry and winning a 3-team shootout with Newberry and Mount Dora to get into the playoffs. They needed both of those to be able to get to this point, and their prize, last year's Class 2A state champion, now down to 2B, Jacksonville Bulls. The Bulldogs are 8-1. They did lose last week to last year's 3A champion Cocoa in an overtime thriller. You know, if they came out of that fully healthy, it's going to be a tough time for the Red Devils, who, by the way, are extremely athletic. They've got 3 or 4 Division I players on that team. Bulls is a different animal, though, Cliff.
I agree. Deontay Welch is arguably Williston's top player. TJ King also does a good job running the ball for the Red Devils. But when you say different animal, those 2 guys that Williston has, Bulls, you would probably say, has what, 8 or 10 of those guys, and that's a problem. And plus, the game is up there. Give Derek Tripoletti a lot of credit for what you said, being able to get a win at Newberry, and then winning the getting the runner-up berth out of the 3-team playoff. But like you said, you do that, yay, and oh, look what we have. Jacksonville Bulls on our plate. But you got to be in it to win it. It is going to be a daunting task, as you said. But, Troy, if you ask those kids, they'd rather be having this game than Jacksonville Bulls than figuring out something else to do on their Friday evening during the first week of the playoffs.
Now, with that said, Wilson's going to have an awfully good basketball team this year, and the football players are on that basketball team. I bet the basketball coaches, deep down inside, do they want their kids to win in football? Probably wouldn't have minded an extra week of practice with those guys.
That'd be a good question to ask Steve Faulkner.
But they're going to have their time. Yes. The basketball team's going to have its time. We'll be talking more about them in February and March. They're going to be awfully good this year. Going down to Class 1A, we're going to talk about a team whose only loss this year was 14-13 in overtime at Williston. It's the Dixie County Bears last year. This is kind of interesting. 4-6 last year, I believe, with an Ole Miss-bound tailback, Rodney Scott. And by the way, that guy is so good. He's not redshirting this year. He's playing for Ole Miss. Going to play in a bowl game this year too. So, you lose that, and then you have a five-win improvement. Give Coach Brent Wilkerson a lot of credit, and those kids, they had swine flu issues early in the season that really cut down on practice time, affected them early in their games, and those guys have really bounced back. Like I said, they have not lost since week 2 at Williston.
Also adding to the issues you said Dixie County's had to deal with. In a game I was able to cover when they beat Wildwood in a key district game. They were without three-year starting quarterback Cameron Keene, who was diagnosed with viral meningitis earlier that week. So he's been back, and he does a real good job running Coach Wilkerson's offense. Last year when they had Rodney Scott, he was sort of tough in a tough situation where he felt at times his team was too predictable. But at the same time, it's sort of a double-edged sword. How do you don't want to, if you're a coach, you have to give the ball to your Division I stud running back. And at times he did that. Everybody else in the state even knew he was doing that. But you have Michael West and Stephen Gobbolt that really, gives a little bit of a different dynamic to Dixie in terms of running the football. I think they can win this game. Good thing for Dixie County, I think you would agree, that they're not playing a volleyball match with Tampa Berkeley Prep, because they would be probably in big trouble if that happened.
That probably would be true, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't earlier. It is Tampa Berkeley Prep coming in. They are the district runner-up to Fort Meade,
yes,
who coached by Jamal Cornelius, who Dixie could see next week, provided both teams are victorious this week. Going to move down to 1B. Going to talk about a team that is every year we talk about in the playoffs. The Lafayette Hornets, only 7-3 this year. We used to talk about them 10-0 and oftentimes, at worst 9-1. But they have lost 3 games this year. But they have a good team. Nick Bracewell, their Division I prospect at quarterback, missed a good part of the early part of the season, but he's back and ready to go now. And they've got a trip up to Jefferson County, which Jefferson County's always got an athletic team, and it could be a very good game, one of the better games in the state this week.
You talk about Bracewell. I think last year in the first round of the playoffs, when they, and I think you would agree, got surprised by Port St. Joe. They had Jamal Reed and company and 2 or 3 other guys that are currently playing college football. At times last year, it looked like Nick Bracewell was a little uncomfortable in that first round playoff game. Obviously, it's a team game, so it doesn't fall on one person's shoulders. But obviously, a lot of things begin and end with the quarterback. And I think this will be a good test for Nick Bracewell. It's more of his team this year, being he's a senior. Doesn't have as good of a supporting cast as he did last year with Jamal Reed as a receiver can make me and you look good throwing passes. But I think it's time for him to really assert himself, in terms of coming back from the injury. And at times, I don't know how you feel. I've gotten a little bit of a tough read on Lafayette, where a game I thought they could win, they don't. So and they lost to the rival Brantford last week, a 9-1 team whose independent Brantford probably would be in the playoffs if they were in a district. And I'm interested to see what Bracewell does overall, like I said, and if they can bounce back from a loss to Brantford, a team they normally don't lose to.
Now, with that said, Lafayette really was playing for nothing last week, except for pride, as far as it's two schools 10 miles apart. But pride means a lot. You know, it means a lot to these kids. They're basically neighbors with the kids from Branford. So who knows if they might have been looking a little ahead to the playoffs. But with that said, if they were looking ahead, they got bit by it last week by a very, very good Branford team. By the way, if they win their bowl game tonight, 10 wins for Coach Bill Wiles' crew, and that's a big thing.
And so big of a thing, John. Coach Wiles actually told me would be their first 10-win season since 10 wins in, I believe, 1977.
Wow. So
that's what Coach Wiles said. So obviously someone was doing a lot of research out there in Branford to find that stat, and if they can get it done, good for him and his team.
Trish, who's doing the camera here, was just a twinkle in her family's eye in 1977. We mentioned 10 wins. Let's talk about the area's only 10-win team. Hawthorne right now 10-0. First-round playoff game at home against Tallahassee FAMU, which has been a 1B powerhouse ever since the classification was created. Yes,
2006 1B state champ, 2007 1B state runner-up, and they got to the state semifinals a year ago. So you're absolutely right. This team knows how to get to the playoffs and do some damage in the playoffs. I'm actually, you think I'm excited for all these high school football games, which there's a lot of truth to, but I'm actually looking forward to Hawthorne's game. I'm going to get a chance to cover that for the Gainesville Sun. First time I'm going to get a chance to see Hawthorne in person this year. But from what I hear from all the other coaches and other reporters that we've had here that have covered them, speed, speed, speed. All over the place. They're not a very deep team, but what's the expression on speed kills? And maybe in this case it could be a perfect description for Hawthorne. Armand Pittman, DJ Lawrence, Marquise Hayes is the quarterback. They do a lot of things. Coach Pruitt, Ronnie Pruitt, who's the brother of Robbie Pruitt, who had a lot of success at Union County in the late 90s. It was the later mid-90s.
He was both.
Okay.
Early also.
In the 90s, he was very good with Andrew Zhao and state championships at Union County. And his brother has done a great job. Like you said, first perfect regular season in school history. Best mark since a 9-1 mark in 03 when they were led by someone that Gator fans know, former, obviously, Hawthorne, former Gator, and current injured Eagles tight end Cornelius Ingram led them to a 9-1 mark that year. But I'm really looking forward to this matchup. I'd like to think Hawthorne's going to find a way to keep their magical season rolling here.
And like we mentioned with Dixie County, Hawthorne also was 4-6 last year. We actually did skip over predicting some games. I think we picked the 4A games and we picked the 2B game. I'm going to say in the 1A game, I got Dixie County over Berkeley Prep.
I do as well.
And in the 1B games, I'm going to take the two locals also. I think, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if both of them did get upset or did fall in this game. But I do think both of them are going to pull through. I think Lafayette wins on the road. I think Hawthorne wins at home. They rematch next week.
I do too, except I'm a little skeptical to see what Bracewell does on the road. A little concerned to what he did last year in the first round of the playoffs, where at times he looked a little uncomfortable. If that happens again, I could see Lafayette getting a loss, but maybe he gets comfortable and finds his rhythm.
And real quick, we're going to go over the state. My Class 6A state championship pick. I'm going to pick the obvious. I'm going to go with Miami Northwestern. Beginning of the year, I picked them over Daytona Beach Mainland. Mainland's had a rough year, but I still think that's going to happen. You have any thoughts?
What's the expression? Running with the Bulls with Miami Northwestern. They have a ton of fans go wherever they seem to travel to. I believe if they win the first round matchup, they will get a rematch with Miami Central, a team that was ranked first in the class earlier this season at Northwestern actually beat, correct?
Right, and actually after Northwestern lost to Booker T. Washington, Central went to number 1. Northwestern beat Central on a nationally televised game on ESPN and moved back to number 1. But yeah, that's a rough district when that's your champion and your runner-up, and they're probably the two best teams in Class 6A.
I would say so.
Going to 5A, my pick is the same one you could pretty much pick every year. I got St. Thomas Aquinas over Lakeland.
Number 1 team in the country. I don't see any reason why they're not going to roll and grab another state championship unless there's something I don't know, John.
And 4A, I'm going to go with Palm Beach Garden Dwyer to win the championship. At this point, I'm leaning toward Niceville in the final, but I am not going to count out the Gainesville High School Hurricanes. I really think if they, or even Columbia. Columbia has beaten Gainesville this year. I think if they get a second time around, I think Gainesville might win that one. But at this point, if you had to twist my arm, I'd say Niceville losing to Dwyer in the finals. But I would not be surprised if we see Gainesville or Columbia squeak through in the North.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'll go out on a limb. I said one of the local teams gets by Niceville, and I don't know if they can bring a state championship home, but I'm going to say they get by Niceville in the North, whether that's GHS or Columbia.
In 3A, a semi-local team, North Marion, I think has got a good shot to get to the state title game, but they're going to have to get through a team that already beat them by 1 in overtime this year, St. Augustine. I'm thinking it's going to be a tough task for Craig Damon and company, but I'm going to, here we go. I'm going to pick the upset. I think North Marion's going to get there. I think they're going to lose to Miami Washington in the final this year. How's that?
Well, then I'll just disagree with you, John, because I've been known to do that. Even though I do agree with you a lot when it comes to statewide stuff, but I'm gonna go with St. Augustine because earlier in the year you said we're doing our picks file. Cliff, you see St. Augustine, you pick them. So you're a wise guy, or excuse me, wise man when it comes to this, not a wise guy. So you said to go with St. Augustine. I'm going to go with them to win the state championship.
In 2A, I'm going to go once again. I think Belglade Glade Central is going to be the South representative, and I think they're going to play either Madison County or Godby. Godby has beaten Madison this year, so I'm going to give Godby the nod again. Looking at the regions, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick Cocoa. I'm going to pick Cocoa in the North for whatever they are in the North this year and not the South. I think Cocoa is going to beat Glade Central in the final.
I was just going to ask you that, making sure my eyes were okay, that a Cocoa team that beat Bowles in one overtime or 2 overtime, and I was defending 3A state champ, like you said. They're in 2A now.
Cocoa's defending 3A champ.
Yes, now in 2A. Big win over Bowles. I agree with you. I think they're going to get to the title game and win that. In 2B, I'm going to go with Jacksonville Bulls winning the whole thing, and it's interesting because defending champ Pahokee is actually on the road in the first round at Hollywood Chaminade Madonna. Pahokee is not as good as they have been. I do think somehow those guys are going to find a way to get to this title game, and I don't think they're going to beat Bulls, though. So I'm going to go with Bulls over district runner-up Pahokee in the final. I like Bulls as well. I think Trinity Catholic is... if they play them in the second round, I think it's going to give them a little bit of a challenge. I don't think you don't agree with that.
I think Trinity Catholic could lose first round. West Nassau almost beat Bowles. Now, with that said, Trinity Catholic's got an awfully good team.
Yeah, but I would agree. I don't think they're going to find. You have to be a real extra special team loaded with talent to beat Bowles, and unfortunately for Williston, that's who they have to play in first round. But yeah, I don't see. I don't know if I totally agree with the Pahokee. With those guys finding a way, but it is a shock that they are on the road in the first round. When was the last time that happened? I don't know.
Actually, they won a state title a few years back when Kings Academy beat them, and they were on. But you're right, it hasn't happened very often.
Yes.
Class 1A, I'm going to go with Fort Meade over Jacksonville Trinity Christian in the final. I just think Jamal Cornelius' team's going to find a way to do it.
I'm going to go with Trinity Christian. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, former Gator Gus Scott is an assistant coach at Trinity Christian.
I believe he is, and former Trinity Christian player.
Yes, I was actually there in '99 when they played Williston in the state semis when Gus Scott was the quarterback. So I'm going to go with Gus Scott and as an assistant on state power, a consistently good team in Trinity Christian.
1B. This is the one with the two locals at the very top. I think Jupiter Christian is going to win this championship, and I've got them right now beating South Daytona Warner Christian in the final. With that said, that's really picking against Hawthorne, which has gone undefeated this year, and it would not surprise me if those guys bust through. But gun to my head, I've got Warner Christian getting through in the North, and I got them losing to Jupiter Christian in the final.
Well, you know what? I'll say Hawthorne's special season continues all the way to Orlando, a game we'll have to be at if Hawthorne gets there. But like many other area teams in the past, I think they'll stumble in the state championship game. But I'll upset Dark Horse, whatever you want to say it. Hawthorne finds a way to get to the state championship game, which a game I'm sure Cornelius Ingram probably would attend, don't you think?
He might, if he can. 1997, last year's state champion in the area. We'll see if we got another one this year. Either way, lots of playoff games statewide running through the middle of December. Enjoy them. I know we will.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. I'm John Patton. This is Cliff Olsen.